Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and thank you so much for being here. Today I'm going to be doing a full face using nothing over $10. A lot of drugstore makeup has gone up in price over the past few years, so it can be a little bit tricky to find makeup $10 and under, but there are still a lot of products that are really good that are 10 and under, and I wanted to share those with you today. So I'm going to be doing a full face using all of the products that I could find in my collection that are $10 or less. So before we get into it, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it, and let's get into it. All right, so starting off with primer, I'm going to be using the e.l.f. Acne Fighting Putty Primer. I haven't used this in a little while because I've been hooked on my liquid poreless putty primer, and I still love that one, but I wanted to switch it up for today's video. So I'm going to be using another favorite, which is the Acne Fighting one. This one is really good at blurring my pores. It helps my makeup last longer. It does have a little bit of that green tint, but I don't find that it has any sort of coverage. So it does kind of tone down the redness on my cheeks, but I wouldn't use it as like a color correcting primer or anything. But it does have salicylic acid, which is really good at preventing acne. I'm also adding a little bit to my forehead, just in the center, and to my chin. I'm going to be mixing 2 shades of the NYX Born to Glow foundation. This one is in the shade Warm Vanilla, and this one is a little too light for me. I've never been able to use this one on its own. And same with the other shade that I have, which is True Beige. This one is too deep for me. So I'm going to try to mix them. And even though I love this foundation, the fact that I never purchased my perfect shade is why I haven't used this foundation all that much. But I do really like it. So I'm going to try to mix a shade that matches me. I always have a hard time mixing these two because one is very yellow and the other one is a little bit on the more orange side. So let's see if I can do it. So here's the shade that I came up with. Might not be a perfect match. I'm gonna blend it out first with my brush. And this foundation is glowy without being super dewy. And it has really good coverage as well. So I've always liked it. I just don't reach for it often just because of the shade issue. You can still find it on the NYX website, but they don't have all of the shades available. And I also saw some shades available on Walmart and Amazon. So if you've been wanting to try this foundation, I would definitely try to get it now because it might be gone forever soon enough. And I'm going to tap over it with my sponge. I definitely need to reach for this foundation more often. I always forget how pretty it is. Or it's not that I forget, like I know that I like it, but I just rarely reach for it because of the shade issue. Let's move on to concealer, and this one is an older favorite. So this is the Catrice Liquid Camouflage High Coverage Concealer. And the reason I haven't used this that often anymore is because it can be a little bit drying on my under eyes. It didn't used to be, but I think just because of getting older, my under eyes aren't as hydrated as they once were. So this one can look a little bit drying and heavy on me now, which is unfortunate because this concealer looks so good when you don't struggle with too much dryness under your eyes. And it also wears a really long time. This is definitely my go-to long wear concealer, or at least it used to be. So I'm gonna first apply the shade Nude Beige, and I'm just applying a little bit of this one before I go in with the more brightening one. So applying light beige right over top. But this concealer I used to wear to concerts all the time because of how long wearing it is. Okay, it's looking pretty good today, but it does look a little bit drying underneath my eyes. But it didn't used to look like that. It might also be because this concealer is a little bit older now. I don't even know how many years I've had it in my collection, but I might need to either declutter it or replace it with a newer one. So I'll have to see. Maybe I'll wear it a couple more times and see if I still really like it or not. It smells fine, but I have noticed it separating a little bit more in the tube than it used to, so maybe I do need to replace it. I'm gonna take my e.l.f. Prime and Stay finishing powder in the shade Fair Light, and I'm just gonna apply this underneath my eyes. Okay, that looks a lot better now that I set it with the e.l.f. powder. This one just always helps to smooth out my under eyes. So even if my concealer doesn't look the best, this powder always makes it look better, so I definitely recommend this one. And now I'm gonna set the rest of my face with the Wet n Wild Photo Focus Translucent Setting Powder. Even though I do try to rotate through my powders, this one is still a staple in my collection. And a little bit goes a long way with this powder. This is about how much I use for my entire face, and sometimes I use a little bit less than that. So this container will last you a really long time. I'm gonna go ahead and do my brows off camera, but I'm gonna use the e.l.f. Ultra Precise Brow Pencil in the shade Cool Brown. And then I'm gonna set my brows with the e.l.f. Wow Brow Gel in the shade Deep Brown. These are both longtime favorites, so I'm gonna do that off camera and I will be right back. All right, brows are on, and I also primed my lids with the Milani Eyeshadow Primer. It's getting a little bit old now, but it still seems to work fine, so I'm gonna keep using it. But I did pick up the Milani Gilded Mini eyeshadow palettes recently. I got the all matte one, which is called Whiskey Business. Super pretty and neutral. I think this one is perfect for everyday looks. And I also got this one in the shade Champagne Problems. And this one has a couple of similar shades to the all matte one, but it also has some shimmers, and a couple of the shades lean a little bit warmer. So I might combine both of these palettes, and I kind of want to use one of my ColourPop Super Shock shadows. This is in the shade Millionaire, and this is just the perfect bronzy, glittery eyeshadow. And I haven't used this in a really long time, so I kind of want to incorporate it into this look. So let's start off with some matte shades. So I'm going to start off by mixing these two shades from the Whiskey Business palette, and I'm going to apply that into the crease. I've used these palettes a couple of times, and all of them seem to blend really well. The shimmers aren't the best, but even then I can make them work. But I would say the matte shades are the ones that stand out the most. So just dipping back and forth between those two shades. And that created the perfect matte transition shade. And actually, let me show you what these palettes look like side by side, because some of the matte shades do overlap. They're pretty similar, but the palettes do complement each other nicely. So I like that I have both of them in my collection, but ideally, I think the matte palette is my favorite, and it's definitely the one that I've reached for the most since purchasing both of these. Next, I'm taking this shade from the Whiskey Business palette, and I'm gonna apply that onto the outer corners. This is a really nice mid-tone matte shade. So it's not gonna deepen up the outer corners too much, but it does add a little bit of depth. I feel like this is the perfect all matte palette for fall, and especially pairing it with some of my ColourPop Super Shock shadows. I feel like this is all I really need for everyday looks. And then I'm gonna take this shade from the Champagne Problems palette and applying it right to the outer corners. That shade is so easy to blend, especially for being such a deep matte shade. I'm not having any issues like with any sort of patchiness. So I feel like these palettes are very beginner friendly. I'm not the best with eyeshadow, even though I have been doing my makeup for years now. I still struggle with blending. So I think these are very user friendly. I'm gonna take the lightest shade from the matte palette, and I'm gonna use that to sort of clean up the edges and kind of use it like a brow bone highlight as well. I don't know if it's light enough for that, but I'm using it more so to clean up the eyeshadow. And if you wanted to keep this look all matte, you could probably go in with this shade right here or even the lightest one on the lids, but I am gonna add a little bit of shimmer. Look at how pretty that is. I would say it's a neutral bronzy shade with a ton of glitter. So I'm gonna apply that with my finger. And surprisingly, this Super Shock shadow hasn't dried out yet. I've had it for a couple of years, which I thought it would have dried out by now, but it's actually lasted. It has a little bit of a pink glitter in there, but the glitter isn't chunky or anything. I've always loved the Super Shock formula, and I'm gonna lightly buff around the edges. I don't know why I don't reach for my Super Shock shadows more often, because every time I use them, I'm reminded of how much I love them. So this one is a favorite. I'm gonna go ahead and finish up my lower lash line now. I'm gonna mix those first two matte shades that I used from the Whiskey Business palette and just buffing that onto the lower lash line. And then taking this slightly deeper shade and going right over top of that. And then just blending that out. And then taking that deepest shade from the Champagne Problems palette and keeping it right on the outer corner. I'll do my mascara and an inner corner highlight a little bit later, but I'm gonna go in with bronzer next. This is the e.l.f. Primer Infused Bronzer in the shade Forever Sunkissed. I just always end up reaching for this one, even over some of my favorite high-end bronzers. It's the perfect neutral bronzer shade, so it doesn't pull too warm. It's also really nice and buildable. I didn't apply any cream bronzer or contour because I didn't actually have one $10 or under, but luckily this bronzer is under $10. I'm just taking a little bit onto the sides of my nose. I haven't done that in a little while. I did used to do this step all the time. Okay, for blush, I'm gonna be using the Wet n Wild Color Icon blush in the shade Mellow Wine. And this one I really like, but I haven't used it in a while. I just keep reaching for my cream and liquid blushes, so I tend to neglect my powder ones. I might also top it with this one from Essence. This is the Essence the blush in the shade Bespoke, and this one has a shimmery finish. So I'm just gonna apply a little bit of the Wet n Wild one first. This one can be pretty pigmented, but it's such a pretty blush shade. I feel like this is perfect for fall. And then going in with this one next, I'm just gonna use that same brush. This is one of my all-time favorite powder blushes. It actually paired really nicely with the Wet n Wild one. Maybe I went a little overboard with the blush, but I just can't get enough of this shade. It's the perfect bronzy blush shade in my opinion, so yeah, definitely recommend this one. Let's move on to setting spray, and I'm gonna do that before I apply my highlighter. So I'm gonna use the Wet n Wild Photo Focus Natural Finish Setting Spray. The mister isn't as fine as some of my other favorites, but it still does a nice job at setting my makeup, so I'm gonna go ahead and apply this. Yeah, not the finest mist. It can be a little bit of an aggressive spray. Nothing crazy, but I definitely have other ones that spray better than this. But it's still a good setting spray. Okay, for highlighter, I'm gonna use the Wet n Wild Mega Glow Highlighting Powder in the shade Precious Petals. I have not used this in maybe a couple of years, but this was super popular a few years ago. I remember a lot of people talking about this. It's a really good highlighter. I wouldn't say it's a favorite for me, but I do like it. It does remind me of the Becca Champagne Pop highlighter, at least in terms of shade. It does have a similar tone to it. I probably don't need highlighter, to be honest, because of that Essence blush, but I still want to apply a little bit. Yeah, that looks really pretty. Okay, I am looking so glowy today, especially because of that NYX Born to Glow foundation, the Essence blush, and now this highlighter. So I'm not mad about it. I really like that glowy look, and I almost forgot to apply this to my inner corners. Yeah, that is the perfect inner corner highlight shade for this look. Not too gold, not too pinky. It's just like the perfect in between. I'm gonna go ahead and apply mascara next, and I'm gonna go in with the Essence Lash Princess Mascara. I feel like a lot of these have been favorites for years, and this one not only is affordable, but it's such a good mascara. It's very lengthening, volumizing. It makes my lashes look very dramatic, and it also doesn't flake or smudge, so it's just a really good mascara in general. I went ahead and lined my upper and lower waterline with the Milani Stay Put eyeliner in the shade Semi Sweet, which is a deep brown shade. So moving on to lips, I'm going to go ahead and line my lips with the LA Girl Ultimate Intense Stay Auto Liner, and this is in the shade Keep It Spicy. I love this lip liner shade, but my only issue with it is that it breaks super easily. I have gone through one of these before, and I went through it way too quickly because it kept breaking on me, but I'm still going to use it because I love this shade. It's a really pretty mid-tone pinky brown shade. I'm going to try to be careful and not apply so much pressure. And then I'm going to apply the Milani Color Fetish Matte Lipstick in the shade 450 Desire. And this one might actually be a little bit too deep for what I'm going for. So I might have to top it with another one of the lighter shades. So I'm just going to tap a little bit of that on. And blend that out with my finger. I like to apply this lipstick lightly because it is so pigmented and matte. I like to keep it to just like a thin layer and blend it out with my finger. It's just a lot more comfortable that way. But I'm also going to top it with this lighter shade, and this is called 420 Tease. And this is a neutral nude shade. I'm going to top it with a little bit of gloss. I'm thinking this one from Maybelline. This is the Lifter Gloss in the shade Crystal, and it's a bronzy glittery shade, so I might add a little bit of that. I feel like it would tie in really nicely with the Super Shock shadow that I have on the lids. Okay, I love the way that looks. It also added a little bit of moisture to my lips, especially because the Milani lipsticks are very matte. All right, you guys, so that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I had so much fun basically shopping my stash for makeup that's $10 and under. A lot of these I hadn't reached for in a while, so I'm really glad that I got to use them today. I'm loving this blush combo. I'm definitely gonna have to do that again, and this lip combo as well. Let me know if you guys have any $10 and under makeup recommendations. I would love to know. And I will see you in my next one. Bye.